When I seen this spring head, it's almost like stepping back in time to me.
It's amazing, man. You could almost crawl up in that, couldn't you?
There's not a lot of places like this left on the face of this.
We could have that money to spend easily, but we're not making it because Tim don't want to take the risk. But it could be paying for this, and this could be done in one afternoon. This is going to take me forever to dig.
Laughed when he showed up with that easy grin and backwoods charm. But deep down, the old-timers said Tickle was a storm dressed like a joke. On Moonshiners, he was the lovable outlaw. The guy who could turn a copper coil and a mason jar into TV gold. Behind the laughs and late-night runs through the Appalachian woods, there were whispers and warnings that he was running too close to the edge.
Even though you may not see them, I don't know them, there's a lot of people involved in this network. I'd rather for you to take it than anybody else take it.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility, but I definitely won't.
Nobody listened. Everyone just thought it was all part of the show. But when the cameras stopped rolling, reality caught up fast, and what came next was something no one saw coming. This isn't just another moonshine story. It's a tale about fame, addiction, and the man who lived as if every batch might be his last. Join us as we tell that tale in a way you've never heard before. There was always something about Stephen Ray Tickle that didn't quite fit television. He wasn't camera-ready in the Hollywood sense, his beard wasn't perfectly trimmed, his accent wasn't softened for national audiences, and his life wasn't built around scripts. When Moonshiners premiered on Discovery Channel in 2011, viewers met a man who looked like someone straight out of the Appalachian woods. Tickle was different from the network's other reality stars. He wasn't pretending to be a rebel or a blue-collar hero, he simply was one. His charisma came naturally. The way he handled himself around a still, the rhythm of his speech, the ease with which he could talk about MASH recipes or dodging revenues, all of it felt unfiltered and untrained. That was part of his charm, because he didn't care about being on TV. He cared about moonshine, and he cared about having a good time while making it. Audiences loved this part of him. In a world full of polished influencers and manufactured drama, he was something rare, an unvarnished connection to a vanishing slice of America. He became the kind of character that made you feel like you knew him personally. Whether he was joking around with Tim Smith, his longtime friend and mentor on the show, or barreling down a back road in an old truck, he carried that air of reckless authenticity. But even early on, the crew noticed something unpredictable in him. He wasn't just lively, he was restless. Behind the grin was a man who didn't always know how to slow down. The audience saw him as a folk hero. The people closest to him saw a warning sign. Fame, especially for someone who never chased it, can distort the world around you. In those early seasons, he went from being a local craftsman to one of the most recognizable faces on cable television. Fans followed him everywhere, shouting his catchphrases and asking for photos. Bars offered him free drinks. Strangers treated him like a living legend. Unlike Hollywood stars who learned to manage that spotlight, he didn't have a team of handlers or a PR wall to hide behind. He had friends, co-stars, and a small-town way of living, and that wasn't enough protection from what fame does to a man. What made Moonshiners so successful was its tension between law and folklore. The show blurred lines between legality and legacy, between moonshining as crime and moonshining as culture. Tickle was at the center of that myth. He wasn't just making liquor, he was reviving the outlaw spirit that had defined Appalachia for generations, and as the seasons rolled on, that outlaw spirit began to bleed off screen. The Tickle viewers adored was funny, carefree, and lovable. The man behind him, according to many who knew him, was carrying an invisible burden. The crew's live wire nickname for him wasn't about danger. it was about unpredictability. One day, he'd be the life of the party. The next, he'd disappear for hours, lost in thought or frustration. For a man who'd built a persona around living free, the sudden weight of celebrity was suffocating. But before television found him, he was just a man in the woods. So let's take a look at that man. A star born in the woods steps into fame's corruption. Before Moonshiners turned him into a television personality, Stephen Ray Tickle was simply a man surviving on skill, grit, and tradition. He was born in the late 1970s in rural Virginia, where he grew up surrounded by stories of moonshining. The craft wasn't just about making liquor, it was about family, history, and self-reliance. In communities where factory closures and shrinking job markets had left men without much opportunity, moonshine represented a way to stay independent, even defiant. For Tickle, it wasn't rebellion, it was inheritance. He learned to weld, fix cars, build anything out of scrap, and, most importantly, distill. He often spoke about the process with pride, describing it as turning corn into gold. To him, every jar of shine was part of a legacy handed down from the hills, perfected in secret and guarded like treasure. When Discovery Channel began scouting for locals who could bring moonshiners to life, he didn't have to audition like a Hollywood hopeful. He just showed up, talked, and was himself. His presence was undeniable. Executive producers immediately recognized what they had: an authentic storyteller with natural comedic timing and an ability to make the illegal art of moonshining sound like both science and religion. The premise of Moonshiners was risky from the start. It portrayed men making and distributing illegal alcohol in modern Appalachia, a world most viewers assumed had vanished decades ago. But the network played on that romantic outlaw imagery. They depicted hard-working Southerners defying authority, preserving a forgotten craft, and doing it all with humor and pride. Tickle became the show's heartbeat. While Tim Smith played the business-savvy moonshiner trying to go legit, Tickle was the soul of the series as the reckless, funny, and a bit of a philosopher when the jars started clinking. He once said during filming, "You can't cage a man who was born in the woods, you can only try to follow him." That single line would become the unofficial mantra for how fans saw him. But everyone knows television has a way of turning authenticity into performance. The longer Moonshiners ran, the more the network leaned into its colorful characters. His personality was gold for ratings, and every episode seemed to revolve around his antics. He played the fool, the risk-taker, the lovable outlaw, but each season, that line between playing and being grew thinner. Reality TV thrives on chaos. Producers encourage unpredictability, tension, and edge-of-the-law behavior because that's what keeps viewers watching. But when your chaos isn't scripted, it doesn't just disappear when the cameras stop rolling. Tickle, by his own later accounts, began to struggle with the lifestyle that came with fame. The drinking wasn't just for show anymore. The travel, attention, and pressure to live up to his image began to wear him down. The man who once joked that "shine runs through my veins" started showing signs that the very thing he celebrated was slowly undoing him. In interviews during this period, he often tried to shrug it off with humor. Meanwhile, viewers kept tuning in, unaware that behind the charm and laughter was a man quietly unraveling. The fame machine didn't stop, and Moonshiners kept rolling, because as long as he was unpredictable, the show was exciting. The irony was cruel in the sense that the very quality that made him famous was the same one that was leading him toward disaster. By 2014, something had changed in his public image. Fans who once saw him as the show's lovable outlaw started to notice moments where the laughter seemed forced, the energy different. On screen, he still cracked jokes and pulled stunts that made producers cheer for another great take. But off-camera, people began to whisper that the man they were filming was not the same one who started this ride. Those close to him knew that fame hadn't made him rich. It had made him restless. Unlike Hollywood stars or network leads, reality show personalities rarely see the kind of money their fame suggests. For someone like him, who came from a working-class background, the sudden attention was dizzying, but the financial payoff didn't match the stress. He'd travel for appearances, sign bottles of legal moonshine branded under Tim Smith's Climax Moonshine, and take photos with fans who saw him as a folk hero. When the crowds disappeared, he'd return to small-town Virginia, where the cameras no longer followed. That gap between the image and the reality started to eat away at him. Crew members later described him as a man stuck between two worlds, and like many who find themselves trapped between those worlds, he turned to old habits for comfort. Alcohol had always been part of the culture that made Moonshiners what it was. It wasn't portrayed as abuse, it was heritage. But there's a difference between sipping the shine and drowning in it, and the deeper his fame went, the more his vices began to take control. In late 2013, he was arrested for public intoxication in Virginia. It was the kind of charge small-town sheriffs see all the time. Nothing scandalous, nothing headline-worthy, but for Discovery Channel, it was a red flag. Networks fear headlines that connect their stars to anything criminal, especially on shows already flirting with illegality. Fans brushed it off as a misunderstanding. Even his castmates joked about it, but for those who'd been around the block long enough, the incident was a signal that the boundaries between character and self were gone. In the months that followed, small incidents began to pile up. Missed calls from producers, late arrivals on set, moments where his humor felt replaced by frustration. Yet no one on the team wanted to face the fact that he was spiraling. By 2015, he was back in the headlines. Another arrest. This time for driving on a suspended license. Fans again laughed it off. "That's our boy," they said, celebrating his outlaw image without realizing that the man behind it wasn't playing a role. Friends and former castmates later recalled how the fame and the expectations had warped his sense of direction. He was constantly being pulled between the reality of television and the authenticity he believed in. In 2016, the situation worsened. Police in Virginia stopped him once again, this time finding a sawed-off shotgun in his vehicle. The charge carried weight. It wasn't the kind of arrest you could laugh away. Tickle was convicted of possessing an illegal firearm, sentenced to jail time, and placed on probation afterwards. When he was released, he told local reporters he'd learned his lesson. You can't take life for granted. "I made a mistake, and I'm paying for it." The pain in his voice was hard to miss. The man who'd built his reputation on being untamable now had to report to parole officers and follow court orders. For someone like Tickle, who defined himself by freedom, that was more than punishment. It was an identity crisis. You'd think that things would cool down or start to right themselves after this. But the fall wasn't over. The fall from grace. By 2019, the situation hit rock bottom. He was arrested yet again, this time for possession of substance. It was the darkest turn yet in a story that had begun as a celebration of independence and backwoods ingenuity. He was sentenced to several months in jail, during which time Moonshiners continued without him. The show that once built itself around his personality now had to move on. quietly distancing itself from the man who'd helped make it famous. Behind bars, he confronted what he called the crash after the ride. He told a local Virginia station during an interview after his release that he had finally realized how fast his life had spun out of control. The world that had once cheered his mischief now turned somber. Fans flooded social media with support, urging him to stay strong and sober. They didn't just want entertainment anymore, they wanted redemption. Tickle seemed determined to give it to them. When he returned to Moonshiners, his actions were noticeably different. He spoke openly about his time in jail and the lessons he'd learned. For the first time, reality TV had turned reflective. While the show's narrative painted this as a comeback, something deeper was happening in the culture around it. Moonshiners had always sold a romantic idea of defiance, working men sticking it to the system. Yet now, through Tickle, audiences were seeing the cost of that defiance. When he walked out of jail in 2019, he wasn't just a free man, he was a changed one. For the first time in years, the outlaw from Moonshiners seemed subdued, reflective, and even vulnerable. His trademark grin was still there, but behind it was the look of someone who'd finally met his own breaking point. Freedom, he would later admit, didn't come easily. He told a local Virginia interviewer, "When you live that fast for that long, you forget what quiet feels like." Jail gives you quiet, whether you like it or not. Tickle used that quiet time to take stock of his life. He had gone from a small-town craftsman to a nationally recognized television personality, then to a headline about arrests and addiction. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost control of the narrative and of himself. When Discovery Channel offered him a chance to return to Moonshiners, he accepted with caution. He wasn't the same man they'd filmed a decade earlier. He spoke openly about his mistakes, even calling his addiction a bad batch that nearly cost him everything. The producers, for their part, handled his return with surprising restraint. Gone were the wild montages and over-the-top antics. In their place came a man rebuilding himself in the same hills that had once nearly destroyed him. For many fans, this was the first time Moonshiners felt truly real. The rebellion, the legend, the danger, all of that was still there. But for the first time, it had a human cost attached to it. In one emotional scene, Tickle stood with fellow Shiner Tim Smith, talking about the mistakes of the past. "I've done a lot of stupid things, but the thing about being stupid is, you don't have to stay that way forever." That line struck a chord. It was raw honesty, and for a man who had lived much of his adult life in front of cameras, that honesty was something new. His reappearance on Moonshiners wasn't just a return to TV, it was a reintroduction to himself. In that sense, Tickle wasn't just a victim of fame, he was a victim of authenticity. The very thing audiences loved about him became the thing that endangered him. Sociologists studying the rise of blue-collar reality programming in the 2010s, shows like Duck Dynasty, Axemen, and Moonshiners, have noted how these series often commodify working-class identity. They package authenticity as entertainment, turning real labor, real struggle, and real pain into consumable storylines. He became the perfect case study. He was genuine to the core, but television had turned his genuineness into a brand. The Tickle, audiences adored, was a distilled version of the real man, a caricature made out of charisma, filtered through editing, and sold as America's favorite outlaw. When he finally hit rock bottom, that brand nearly became his undoing. The shadow of addiction. Tickle has never shied away from talking about addiction, though he tends to do it in the same soft-spoken, folksy manner that made him famous. During his time in jail, he reportedly completed addiction counseling and committed to staying sober. Since his release, he's been vocal about how easily small-town drinking culture can spiral into dependency, especially when alcohol becomes part of your livelihood, your reputation, and your livelihood all at once. In Appalachian communities, where moonshine is both tradition and livelihood, that boundary is thin. The region has long faced challenges related to addiction, poverty, and limited access to mental health resources. His story, in many ways, mirrored those struggles. What made his experience resonate wasn't just that he fell, it was that he did it in public. Millions watched his decline, then his redemption, unfolding like a living morality play. He wasn't the first reality TV star to hit bottom, but he was one of the few whose story felt unscripted in every sense. In later interviews, he spoke openly about the pressure of living up to the Tickle persona. People expected me to be this wild guy all the time. You get tired of it, but you don't know how to stop, because if you stop being that person, you think people will stop caring. That's the silent danger of fame that comes without preparation. Unlike actors or musicians, reality stars often become famous without training, guidance, or emotional support. They go from obscurity to recognition overnight, and they're left to deal with the consequences alone. Tickle's addiction wasn't just to alcohol or substances, it was to the life that came with fame. The attention, the chaos, and the energy all fed into the same cycle that made him both beloved and broken. Today, he speaks about that cycle not with shame, but with humility. By the early 2020s, Moonshiners itself had evolved. The show leaned more into the entrepreneurial side of the business, legal distilleries, competitions, and cultural preservation. The outlaws of yesterday had become artisans of today. For him, this was a personal redemption. He became a voice of experience on the show, often serving as both mentor and cautionary tale. Younger shiners looked up to him, not just for his skill, but for his honesty about the mistakes he made. He started working with legal distilleries, speaking at events about the history of moonshining and the importance of preserving Appalachian heritage the right way. The man once known for running from the law was now helping to educate people about the culture he came from. Today, Stephen Ray Tickle lives a quieter life. He still appears occasionally on Moonshiners, still makes fans laugh, but the fire that once burned out of control now burns steadily. He talks more about family, faith, and purpose than about fame. He travels for events, speaks to younger shiners, and advocates for making shine the right way, the legal way. When asked if he misses the chaos, he just smiles and says, "Not enough to go back." What do you think of his redemption arc? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video drops.